It was a regular summer afternoon at the neighborhood pool, kids splashing in the water, parents lounging on chairs, and the hum of laughter filling the air. But near the entrance, an unexpected confrontation broke the rhythm of the day. Mrs. Anna, a confident and outspoken black woman, stood face to face with a young white teenager. Her voice was firm as she questioned his right to be there. The boy stammered, caught off guard, and soon their exchange escalated. Curious onlookers began to gather, their faces a mix of confusion and unease. The tension was palpable, the scene resembling a courtroom drama where unspoken rules and assumptions were being laid bare. Then, a dramatic twist. The hum of an engine cut through the murmurs as a sleek black SUV pulled up to the curb. All eyes turned toward the vehicle, its polished exterior gleaming in the summer sun. When the door opened, the figure who stepped out commanded immediate attention. Gasps rippled through the crowd as recognition set in. This was someone everyone knew but never expected to see here. The atmosphere shifted from tense to electrified, anticipation hanging thick in the air. What unfolded next would not only redefine that summer afternoon, but also challenge deeply ingrained perceptions in a way no one could have imagined. Stay tuned, because this is just the beginning. Jake Edward, a 15-year-old with a quiet confidence, carried himself with a maturity beyond his years. Thoughtful, respectful, and naturally athletic, he had a charm that drew people in without effort. Moving into a new neighborhood wasn't easy, but Jake embraced the change with optimism. His mother, Governor Agnes Edward, had recently made history as a trailblazing leader known for her fairness and strong sense of justice. To the public, she was a symbol of progress. To Jake, she was just Mom, a steady presence in his life, balancing the weight of her responsibilities with unconditional love for her son. For Jake, the move was more than just a change of address. It was a chance to rediscover the simple joys of being a teenager, lazy summer days, new friendships, and the promise of a fresh start. On this particular afternoon, Jake approached the community pool with his swim gear in hand, his heart light with excitement. The water sparkled under the sun, inviting him to dive into a carefree summer. But his plans for a peaceful afternoon were about to take an unexpected turn. Near the entrance stood Anna Benjamin, a woman in her early 60s whose reputation echoed throughout the neighborhood. To some, she was the watchful guardian of the community, ensuring its traditions and rules were upheld. To others, she was a meddlesome figure, quick to judge and slower to listen. As Jake approached, Anna's sharp eyes fixed on him. Her gaze was cold, scrutinizing. She took it upon herself to decide who belonged and who didn't, and Jake, in her narrow view, didn't. "Excuse me," Anna called out, her tone clipped and authoritative. "Are you supposed to be here?" Jake paused, confused by her question. "Yes, ma'am," he replied politely. "I live just down the street." Anna's frown deepened, her skepticism evident. "And who exactly do you live with?" she pressed. Before Jake could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps interrupted the exchange. A tall figure in a sleek business suit strode confidently toward them. It was Governor Agnes Edward, her presence commanding immediate attention. "Is there a problem here?" Agnes asked, her voice calm but firm. Anna froze, recognition dawning on her face. She stammered, searching for words, but the moment had already shifted. The dynamic of the encounter was no longer hers to control. Governor Edward placed a reassuring hand on Jake's shoulder. "This is my son," she said, her tone leaving no room for doubt. "And he belongs here just as much as anyone else." The crowd, which had silently gathered, murmured in surprise and approval. Anna, caught off guard, muttered an apology before retreating. For Jake, the moment was bittersweet. It wasn't the carefree afternoon he had envisioned, but it was a reminder of the lessons his mother had always taught him, about standing tall in the face of prejudice and letting actions speak louder than assumptions. As the governor and her son walked toward the pool, Jake couldn't help but smile. This was more than a fresh start, it was a chance to shape his own path, one moment at a time. The pool hummed with the sounds of summer. Children laughed and splashed in the water, parents relaxed on lounge chairs, and the lifeguards, perched at their stations, seemed more focused on their phones than anything else. It was a typical afternoon, but for Jake, it was the first time visiting the community pool. The sun cast a warm glow over the pristine water, and the laughter of kids created a welcoming backdrop as Jake stepped through the gate with a towel slung over his shoulder. He was excited to experience what he'd heard was one of the best spots in the neighborhood. But as soon as he entered, Anna Benjamin, seated nearby, noticed him. Her eyes fixed on him, her expression shifting as she tried to place him. Anna had lived in the neighborhood for over 25 years, and she didn't recognize him. That alone was enough to raise her suspicion. With authority, she stood up and approached him. Her tone was sharp, her posture stiff. "Excuse me, young man, who are you?" she demanded. Jake, surprised but polite, turned to her. "Oh, hi ma'am. I'm Jake. I just moved here with my mom a few weeks ago." Anna's eyes narrowed. "Moved here? Where exactly?" "I've lived in this neighborhood for 25 years, and I've never seen you before." Jake hesitated, trying to maintain composure. "We live just down the street, ma'am. I'm just here to swim." But Anna wasn't satisfied. "I don't think so. This pool is for residents only." "Do you have an ID? Proof that you live here?" Confused by the demand, Jake blinked. "I didn't bring an ID. I just came to swim. I live on Lane, if that helps." Anna folded her arms, her expression hardening. "Thornfield Lane? Well, if you live there, you should have no problem showing proof. Otherwise, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Around them, the usual hum of poolside activity began to quiet. Bystanders exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of how to respond. The lifeguards shifted nervously in their chairs, clearly aware of the tension but reluctant to intervene. Jake stood his ground. "Ma'am, I don't know what else to say. This is my neighborhood too. I just want to swim." Anna's voice grew louder, drawing more attention. "If you live here, then prove it. Otherwise, you have no business being here. This is private property, and we don't allow just anyone to walk in." Jake glanced around, hoping someone might step in, but no one did. The lifeguards remained seated, weighing whether to intervene, but ultimately stayed silent. The tension was thick and unrelenting. Anna's words were no longer just a simple accusation. Her tone carried an unspoken message that Jake understood all too well. His pulse quickened, but he refused to show any frustration. "I'm not here to cause trouble, ma'am," Jake said, his voice steady. "I just want to enjoy the pool like everyone else." Anna, dismissive, responded immediately. "Then show me you belong here, or I'll get management involved. Or worse." A murmur rippled through the crowd. People whispered among themselves, their faces a mix of curiosity and discomfort, but no one spoke up. The scene was no longer just a misunderstanding. It was becoming something far more significant. Jake, standing alone, felt the weight of the moment. As Anna's voice grew louder, the crowd's attention grew more intense. Some exchanged uneasy glances, others sat silently, but no one intervened. The lifeguards continued to observe, as if unsure how to handle the situation. Jake took a deep breath, trying once more to explain. "Ma'am, I don't know what more I can say. My mom and I moved here recently. I live just a few streets over." But Anna wasn't having it. Her voice was now sharp and cutting. "Enough. If you're not going to prove you live here, I'm calling security. This pool isn't open to the public." The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. Some people shifted uncomfortably, others nodded in agreement with Anna, while a few looked uneasy, their faces marked with quiet disapproval. Still, no one stepped forward. Jake clenched his fists at his sides, his mind racing. Though he felt humiliated, he remained calm. "You don't need to call anyone. I'm not trespassing. I live here." Anna was already reaching for her phone. Hello, yes, this is Anna Benjamin. I'm at the community pool, and there's an unauthorized person here. I think you'd better send someone down right away. The words hit Jake like a wave. Unauthorized person. He glanced around, hoping someone would vouch for him, but the crowd remained silent. The lifeguard remained silent, perched nervously on their high chair, unwilling to intervene. Minutes later, 2 security guards entered the pool area briskly, their presence commanding attention. One of them, a tall man with a clipboard, approached Jake with an air of authority. We've had a report of someone trespassing, he said firmly. Can you tell us your name and why you're here? Jake took a deep breath, steadying himself. My name is Jake Edward. I live in this neighborhood. I'm just here to swim. The guard raised an eyebrow, his gaze shifting briefly to Anna, who stood nearby with her arms crossed and a smug expression on her face. Do you have proof of residency? An ID? A pool pass? Jake shook his head. I didn't bring anything. I just came here straight after school. I live on Pipeline Lane with my mom. The second guard, shorter and stockier, chimed in. Without proof, we can't verify that you belong here. Do you have anyone who can confirm your residency? Jake nodded quickly. I can call my mom. She's at work right now, but oh, please, Anna interrupted, her tone dripping with condescension. If he lived here, he wouldn't have such a hard time proving it. The first guard hesitated, glancing between Anna and Jake. The young teenager's distress was evident, but Anna's confident certainty seemed to sway him. Whispers rippled through the crowd, growing louder, though Jake couldn't make out their words. His hands trembled as he pulled out his phone to text his mom. Mom, can you come to the pool? There's a problem. Each second that followed felt like an hour. Anna watched him with a satisfied smirk, arms crossed as if daring him to find a way out of the situation. Without proof, the taller guard said finally, we may have to ask you to leave until this can be sorted out. Jake opened his mouth to protest, but a sudden shift in the atmosphere silenced him. A sleek black luxury car pulled up outside the pool area, its polished exterior gleaming under the sunlight. The murmurs of the crowd quieted as the car door opened, and Governor Agnes Edwards stepped out. Her presence drew every gaze. Dressed impeccably in her work attire, she exuded quiet authority. The click of her heels on the pavement was the only sound as she approached the pool deck. The security guards straightened immediately, recognizing her. The bystanders exchanged wide-eyed glances, and even Anna's smug demeanor faltered. Governor Edwards stopped a few feet from the group, her gaze sweeping over the guards, the crowd, and Anna before settling on her son. Placing a reassuring hand on Jake's shoulder, she spoke with calm yet unmistakable authority. What seems to be the problem here? And why is my son being treated like a criminal? Anna's face went pale, her composure cracking. I didn't know he was your son. I was just trying to make sure everything was in order. In order? Governor Edward interrupted, her tone cutting. And what gave you the authority to interrogate a teenager at a public pool? My son is a resident of this neighborhood. He has every right to be here without harassment. The taller guard cleared his throat. Governor Edward, we were just responding to a call. There was a concern about what? She asked sharply. A teenager swimming in his community pool? Did you even ask for his side of the story, or did you assume the call justified your actions? The guards exchanged nervous glances, unwilling to meet her gaze. Anna, now visibly trembling, stammered, I didn't mean any harm. I just didn't recognize him, and I thought you thought what? Governor Edward interrupted. That he didn't belong because you didn't recognize him? That his presence required proof while everyone else's didn't? Anna's mouth opened, but no words came out. Turning to the guards, the governor continued, this pool operates under the same laws as the rest of the state, including laws against discrimination. My son deserves the same respect as anyone else. Do I make myself clear? Both guards nodded quickly. Yes, ma'am. Of course. Addressing Anna directly, Governor Edwards' tone softened slightly, though it remained firm. Miss Benjamin, I suggest you reflect on why you felt the need to escalate this situation. From where I'm standing, this looks less like concern and more like bias. Anna flushed deeply, nodding stiffly before gathering her belongings and leaving hurriedly. The crowd's disapproving murmurs followed her exit. The lifeguard, who had remained silent until now, descended from their chair. I should have spoken up sooner, they admitted, voice heavy with guilt. I'll report this and push for better training to ensure this doesn't happen again. Governor Edward nodded. Acknowledging the issue is the first step. But this isn't just about policies, it's about people. Recognize biases and speak up when something's wrong. She addressed the crowd. Discrimination, whether overt or subtle, has no place here. Silence enables injustice. Action prevents it. The bystanders murmured in agreement, some even clapping softly. Jake, standing quietly by his mother's side, felt pride replace the earlier distress. As they left, the guards apologized. We'll review our protocols, one promised. Apologies are a start, the governor replied. But action matters more. Reflect and improve, not just today, but every day. Walking side by side with his mother, Jake felt the weight of the ordeal lift. Her strength and the community's awakening had turned a painful experience into a step towards something better. You handled yourself with dignity today, she said softly as they reached their car. I'm proud of you. Jake smiled. Thanks, Mom. I couldn't have done it without you. As the car drove away, the pool was no longer a place of unease for Jake, but a reminder of resilience, unity, and the fight for justice.